I think you'd be shocked to know how simple it is to uncover your client's true pain points and be able to charge more for your freelance consulting projects. What if I told you that the secret to turning a 4-figure project into a 5 or even a 6-figure project is simply knowing the right questions to ask? My name is Brandon Michaels. I've been a freelance IT consultant for more than 2 decades, and I've done many 5, 6, and even multi-6-figure projects for my clients. In this episode, I'm going to share the 3 things that if you put them into practice will allow you to maximize the value of every project and be able to significantly increase what you earn. The first thing you need to do is investigate. Now, the key to investigating is this. Don't jump right into talking about the project. Your goal is to help solve real problems for your clients, not just do what they tell you they want you to do. If this is a new client, I like to start out by saying, tell me about your business. Now, you don't want to go in not knowing anything at all about their business. You should at least do some research. Check out their website. See if they have any social media channels. See if they publish anything on LinkedIn. Go read through some of that info so you get a general idea of what the company is about, what they do for business. But there is a difference between knowing generally what a company does versus knowing specifically how they run their business. Knowing how they run their business is absolutely essential for you to be able to help them. And how a company runs is based on many different factors. One of those factors is leadership. Who leads the company? Who makes the decisions? How are those decisions made? Another is company culture, the way the company works, the vibe of the company. Another is, are they privately held or are they a publicly held company? Publicly held companies are usually beholden to a board with any big decisions. Some privately held companies also are subject to a board, but oftentimes they're not. So they have a little bit more freedom to make the decisions. Are they a new business or are they a business with a long history? Businesses with long histories tend to be a little bit more on the conservative side in making decisions, whereas a new business may be a little more willing to take risks. Also, is this a family business? Are there any family members working in the business? All these things are going to determine how this specific company actually runs their day-to-day business. And for you to be able to provide the most value to your client, it is super important to be aware of all of these aspects. Here's what you're looking for. The company may be doing the best they can. With all of these other things to consider about how the company runs, they may be doing the best they can, but they may not be doing it the best it can be done. You, as a consultant, you want to think about helping your client do something the very best that it can be done. That's how you have transformative, outsized impact on your client's business. Now, one of the first questions to ask is, what are your biggest challenges? What are your biggest challenges in running your business? Here's where you want to pay very close attention. It's really likely that the project that they came to you with, in the best case, it's not going to solve that problem completely. Whatever problem they're trying to solve with this project, it's not going to solve it completely. Now, in the worst case, it won't solve their problem at all. And that's really comes down to the fact that your clients don't really understand their problems as well as they should. And your goal as a consultant is to understand your clients' problems as well, or even better than they do. The reason they're hiring you is because they don't understand their problems. They don't know how to solve their problems. That's why they're bringing you in. Now, another way you can go about asking this question, I like to call it the abracadabra question. So if you could ask them, if you're a magician and you had a magic wand, and you could just wave that wand and make your business problems go away, what would those problems be? And what would that look like to you as a company when those problems were gone. Now, another question that you want to ask them at this point is, after you have gotten a little information about their company, after you've gotten an understanding of what are some of the biggest challenges in the business, now is the time you want to dig into the project. So you can just say, tell me about this project. Tell me a little bit about the project that you have. Here, your number one goal is to listen. Don't offer suggestions. Don't give recommendations. I know it's tempting to want to be able to do that. You hear something, you know the answer to something, and you want to step in, kind of show them that you know what you're talking about. Honestly, that's just an ego play. At this point, don't answer, don't give recommendations, don't give suggestions. And also, they ask you questions. Don't answer them. Don't answer their questions at this point. You are just trying to listen and gather information. And the best way to do that is to just stick to two responses. The first response is, once the client tells you a little bit about their project, if there's one or two or three aspects of the project that you feel like you need to dig into deeper, you could say, tell me more about that, whatever that aspect was. Tell me more about that. And then when they're done telling you about that, say, is there anything else? You really want to bounce back and forth between these two questions, these two responses, until your client has nothing more to say. Then you can move on to another aspect of the project that they told you about. Just rinse and repeat this until you have all of the information, or at least you think you have all the information. The reason for this is super important. The real issues always lie beneath the surface. They are never what your client initially comes to you with. So now that you know a little bit about the project and you've dug into some of those areas where you wanted to get some more information, now it's time to ask them why. Why did you decide this is important? In other words, what changed that made you realize that you needed to do this project now? It could be that their sales are down. And if their sales are down, they want to do something so that their sales don't go down even further, and maybe they'll end up out of business someday. Or their sales could be up. Maybe things are going well, and they're looking to double down on what has been working for them to this point. Maybe they're facing more competition. Maybe they're in a competitive market. More competition has entered the marketplace, and they realize just to stay afloat, they need to take action. They need to do something different. It's also possible that a new technology has emerged, and they want to take advantage of it. Or maybe they realize they haven't kept up with technology. Now, technical debt is a real thing in many companies, in most companies, I would say. Technical debt is that situation where a company decides not to invest in technology, whether it's upgrading, whether it's moving to something more modern, and they just decide to push that decision off to the future. And then it gets pushed off and it gets pushed off. And now many years later, they're faced with doing an upgrade of their systems, and it's much more expensive to do now because they have so much that they neglected. So much, I guess if you think of it like maintenance on a car, if you neglect maintenance on a car for many, many years, finally, when it really breaks down, you're going to have a large bill instead of if you just kept up with things along the way. And the same thing happens with technology, and especially when it comes to technical debt. It also could be the case that now they have the budget. Now maybe their business is doing well. They've been able to save up some money for this project, and now they actually have the budget in place to be able to tackle this project. So with all of this here, you're trying to gauge how important or how urgent the project is. Also, you're listening for the real why behind the project. And that's going to be super important. All of this information can be super important when it comes time for you to draft your proposal and create your offer. Another really important question to ask is, what else have you tried? Here it's important to understand where your client is in their journey. Let's say this is the first time they're looking into solving this problem. They're just starting to explore. That could be one possibility. Or they may be exasperated. They may be frustrated. It's going to be important for you to know in which stage they're in, so that you can actually, you're going to think about at this point already managing the client relationship. You want to understand what their needs are, what their pain points are, and kind of where they are on their journey. Sometimes a client has tried things in the past. Maybe they tried to change their workflow. Maybe they had a system in place, a technology in place that was not ideal. So they had to kind of work around it. And a lot of times that just doesn't work. It creates more work for people. It creates a lot of headaches. And things like that can actually hurt morale in a company. Another thing they might have tried is they might have tried some different software or a different technology. It's good to know if that's the case, they may be willing to explore different options. They may be more open-minded. Now, they may have tried another consultant. All of these things will give you a feel for kind of what they would be like to work with as a client. For example, if they try different solutions, this is, like I said, this is a way to gauge if they are open-minded or not, but it can also show the willingness to put in the work. Because anytime new software, new technology is brought in, there's always a learning curve. And that does take a toll on an organization. But if they've been willing to try different things, it's likely showing you that they're willing to, on their behalf, put in the work to make this, whatever solution you pursue, make it happen. Now, it could also be the case that maybe they didn't try another consultant. Maybe they tried 3 or 4 different consultants. And in that case, I'd say that's a red flag. It's likely that maybe one consultant, maybe 2 consultants just might not have had the skill set or the experience to solve their issue. However, if it's 3 or 4 consultants that they burned through, I'd say that's a red flag. They might be very difficult. It might be a very difficult client to work with. Now, once you've asked these questions, I think it's very important to ask them, can you show me? So whatever their issue is, whether it's with an existing system, an existing software, whatever it is, ask them to show you up close, firsthand, what's happening. Have them walk you through what they're currently working with and show you their actual pain points. You really want to see these things firsthand. Like maybe they are error messages. It's important that you see firsthand what those error messages are. Maybe they are experiencing system freezes. You want to be able to see that happening in real time. System latency. Maybe their systems are crashing. Important for you to see at what level these things are happening to them. Now, this leads right into the next thing you want to do is you want to aggravate their pain. I know this sounds aggressive, but the truth is that many businesses just put up with issues instead of doing something about them. Your goal is to help your clients see how much their problem is negatively impacting their business. Now, one of your roles as a consultant is to get your client to take action. This problem is hurting their business. Just take an everyday example. Let's say you had a friend and your friend was sick, and your friend continued to get sicker. Would you just stand by and let them waste away? Or would you encourage them to make an appointment with the doctor? Would you maybe even drive them to the doctor, or at least go with them to the doctor? Would you maybe even go in to the waiting room? Or would you actually go into the appointment with them and help them ask questions? Sometimes it's hard in that situation to remember the questions to ask. In the same way, your client may not know the questions to ask. So your goal in aggravating this problem is to be able to get them to see how important, how urgent it is for them to solve this problem and how much it's hurting their business. So you can start by saying, how long? How long have you been dealing with this issue? The truth is often it's easier to get used to living with something, get used to living with a problem, instead of actually putting in the effort to fix it. And if this is a long time, if as you're talking to your client and it becomes apparent that they've been dealing with this or putting up with it for a long time, this can help wake your client up and help them to see that they've been procrastinating. On the other hand, if it's just been a short time, this shows you that this may be a client who takes action quickly. Now, the next question you want to ask is, why haven't you been able to solve the problem? It may be the case that the client doesn't even know where to begin. They may be struggling with even getting a handle on what the problem is. They may know that it's causing them an issue in their business, but they might not actually know what the root problem is. So they may not even know what is the first step. Or maybe they haven't been able to solve it because they've had other projects going on, other priorities. Now, this can be an issue because they may not have the personnel, the resources to throw at this issue. They may have a limited amount and they can only deal with one project at a time. Or it could just be that they didn't have the budget previously. And this leads to our next question, which is, what is the impact if you don't solve the problem? You can ask them straight up, what is the impact in your business if you don't solve this problem? It could be, like we alluded to before, a competitiveness impact. If they don't solve this problem, they're going to lose their place in the market, lose business, and face the prospect of someday going out of business. It could be, if they don't solve this issue, it's going to have a detrimental impact on their personnel. I've seen firsthand how issues in a business's technology have such a negative impact on the staff, on the employees, that those employees leave and they go elsewhere because they just can't put up the stress that's caused by these issues. Could also be financial impact. If they don't solve this issue, they can already foresee how much it's going to hurt their company financially. Now, a project that I was working on a few years ago was developing a software app for a not-for-profit. And this client had been working with their homegrown database. And this is the database. This is their central system that stored all of their client data. What was happening was the system was crashing and the staff was wasting a lot of time getting the system to come back up, recovering once the system crashed. They were already dealing with very limited resources as a not-for-profit. So this is causing them significant pain. Obviously, with minimal resources, they need to maximize the efficiency of the resource. They need to maximize the efficiency of their processes. They need to maximize the efficiency of how their organization operates. Or they won't be able to accomplish the mission to help more people. They were also doing a lot of double work because this system didn't allow them to do the work out in the field. So they had to take hand notes written on paper and then come back into the office and enter this into the system later. This obviously was time consuming, but also stressful. And people who were already tapped out throughout the day dealing with a lot of critical problems that people had, then they had to come back after a long day and then enter this information. And something like that is also error prone. So again, really asking the question here, what is the impact? What is the current impact and what is the future impact on your business, on your organization if you don't solve this issue? Another important question to ask, and again, going back to the financials, is what is this costing your business? Now, I cannot emphasize this enough. If you don't get this, you have nothing. You need to know the current fallout from their pain point, in dollars and cents. That's the most important thing for you to know. So I want to encourage you, I want to urge you, I want to implore you, be intrusive. What's the worst they can say? The worst they can do is refuse to answer. Some companies can get funny when you start talking about their finances. But it is so important for you to understand what is costing their business, and then ultimately, like we talked about before, financially, what they have, what kind of resources they have to allocate to this project. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Going back to our doctor example, being intrusive. Think about when you go to the doctor and you go there with some kind of physical malady, some kind of pain. What does the doctor do? The doctor starts moving your limbs or pressing in certain places. And he's like, does that hurt? Does that hurt? You're like, ow, yeah, that hurts. You wince, or sometimes you jump because of the pain. In the same way, you should be doing this to your client, your potential client. I was working on a project recently. Actually, this one was a few years back too. It was a redesign of a website, simple redesign of a website for a credit union. Of course, that's what they came to me with. They said, we want a more modern website. And I always laugh because nobody just needs a new website. You actually need problems solved in your business. Now, this happened to be the largest credit union in my area, and there are much bigger credit unions in the country, but this fell into the sort of medium size, so between 50,000 and 100,000 members. And this client was specifically in their business, because I was asking these questions, these business questions, all the ones we've been talking about so far. Client was looking to save money specifically by leveraging technology to cut costs. So here's a good example of a client that was aware of the problem, but they were also aware that there was at least some kind of solution out there that would help them cut costs. They just didn't know exactly what it was. But by asking all these questions about their business, about the biggest challenges in their business, I was then able to take that modernization of their website and do it in such a way that actually impacted their business. One of the things that they needed to do was they realized that hardly any of their members, I think it was less than 10% of the time, were using their mobile app. Now, this goes back a few years. Obviously, mobile app use is very common nowadays. But back then, it was earlier on when they had launched their mobile app. And with so few of their members using the mobile app, they would have to come into the branches to come cash checks, make deposits, and that would force them to have to staff a lot of tellers at the counter and staff multiple drive-throughs. So there was a high labor cost. They also, for some reason, had almost none of their members signed up for electronic documents. And that was forcing them every single year. They had to spend $250,000 in sending out paper documents. So the reason I was able to find out this information was simply that I asked the question. I asked those intrusive questions and found out the financial impact of each of these issues. And this ultimately led to me being able to demonstrate big wins. For example, just a few months after launching the website, they were tracking all their metrics. Just a few months later, they had seen a 40% increase in their mobile app downloads. Also, they saw a 25% increase in signups, member signups for the electronic documents. That alone achieved more than $60,000 of savings just for the electronic document signups just in that first year. Now you can imagine how much that compounds year over year. And also, that was just a few months in. How much more the increase would have been on people downloading the mobile app and using that for remote deposits, people signing up for electronic documents. That would have increased more and more over the years. So just think about how one project, if you do it this way with with the end of actually helping and solving problems for your client, how much of an incredible impact you can have in helping their business. And the truth is, those wins only came because I asked specifically about what their problem was costing them. Now, once you have investigated the problem or problems, and once you have aggravated the pain, now it's time for you to motivate. You want to motivate your client. As a consultant, you need to be able to move things forward. Just because a business is aware of the problem doesn't mean they're automatically going to take action. Now, if a real need exists, your goal is to get them to take action. So, ask them the question, what would it mean to your business if? What would it mean to your business if we solved whatever their problem is? You want to help your client envision their ideal future. Envision that tomorrow where their problem is gone. Now, let me say this. The point is not for you to just try to sell them a solution. The point is for you to find out if you can genuinely help this potential client. If you can, great. This is a perfect match. If you can't, if you don't have the skill set, if you don't have the experience, if you don't have the resources, that's okay. Move on. There will be other projects and there will be other consultants who can help that client. But if you can, now is the time where you want to help motivate your client, help them to see what it's going to be like when this problem is actually gone, because all they can see right now, their problem is here. It's up close in their face. That's all they can see at this point. You need to help them envision that ideal future. Another question that's great to ask and very important for you to know is, what would define success? With this project, how do you see this from your perspective as a successful project? Or in other words, what would make this a home run? Here is where you need to understand your client's expectations and also their criteria for evaluating this project, whether or not it's going to be a real win for them. You want to maximize your chances of your clients coming back to you again for more work. And how do you do that? You hit a home run. That's going to keep them coming back to you again and again for more work. Also, what you really want to do is do a great job so you can get a testimonial. So understanding from the client's perspective what their expectations would be in really nailing this project is going to be key for you to achieve both of those things. And we're going to come back to it one more time. We're going to ask the client, so how would this impact your bottom line? Again, you're rolling forward and you're envisioning that tomorrow where the client no longer has this problem to deal with. The problem is out of the way. The solution is in place. How is this now impacting their bottom line? If you've already nailed down the financial impact, ask them, are there any other ways this could financially impact them? Now, here's an example. Some not-for-profits have deadlines within which they need to spend their grant funding, otherwise they'll lose it. So it's possible that not only would the project, with the solution you're putting in place, allow them to, would solve this problem for them, but it may also accomplish a secondary thing, which would be allowing them to spend, enabling them to spend their grant funding, which if they spend it all this year, first of all, they're not going to lose it. But secondly, there's a high likelihood that they'll get renewed for next year, or maybe even more. They'll maybe even receive more grant funding next year. Another way to look at this, another thing to be aware of, is also don't assume things. For example, don't assume that your client would love to save money. Don't assume that saving your money client is necessarily the best thing. For a company, let's say there's a director of a department and that department gets allocated a certain amount of money every year, a certain amount of budget, if they need to spend that, similar to the not-for-profit, if they need to spend that money every year, it may not be helpful for you to deliver a solution that saves them a ton of money. Now, if your solution is designed to save them a ton of money through achieving better efficiencies, streamlining operations, reducing labor costs, then you can use that to your advantage to say, well, we're going to save this much money, but you still have this much money to spend in your budget. That gives you additional leeway to charge more. And I don't just mean charge more. I mean, provide a solution that maybe can solve even a few other problems. This is something, if you watch any of my other videos, any other episodes, you'll see how we talk about delivering a proposal, delivering an offer, and having several tiers where you can have a tier, like a third tier on your proposal, which would not only do what your client asks you to do or attacks just the problem they bring to you, but also because you've done all this investigative work, you may be able to deliver through that project solutions to other of their problems. And that's something, if you know this issue with the money, if you know that they have this extra budget they need to spend, then that can expand the things you can do and also expand the tiers that you can offer them when it comes to your proposal. So again, ask about their money, be intrusive. You can flat out ask what their budget is. Some companies, again, won't want to answer this question, but it's okay to ask and even ask again. And if you come across as trustworthy and in service of this potential client, you're really trying to help them, ultimately, companies will come through and tell you their budget. Now, if it turns out they just don't want to say, ask them for at least a ballpark range. You could even suggest, say, is this, the budget for this project? Would you say it's between $25,000 and $50,000? Would you say it's between $50,000 and $100,000? Would you say between $100,000 and $200,000? Would you say it's more than $200,000? You need something. You cannot fly blind. And you can explain that to your client. It's not going to be possible for you to put together a proposal. It's going to be a waste of their time and your time if you are completely shooting in the dark and have no idea even roughly what their budget is. And again, you're going to use all of this when it comes time to create your proposal. Now, another really important question to ask is, where is this on your list of priorities? This is going to help you assess how important this project is and how soon they're going to be willing to invest money and resources in this project. Recently I was working on a business intelligence project for a client, and this project had urgency built into it. The client wanted first mover advantage. They were in an industry that was kind of technologically regressive. No one else in the industry had anything like what they were wanting to do with business intelligence. So they wanted that first mover advantage. And so I put together an offer to deliver the solution in just 1 month. I don't know that they even expected that it could be done that quickly, but I do know that they wanted to move quickly. Now, this was an existing client. They had been paying me on an hourly basis. In this case, because I knew the urgency, I knew how important it was to them to act quickly, I proposed it to them as a flat fee project. And I guaranteed that I would deliver within a month. That allowed me to effectively triple my rate, triple what I was making before. Now, a couple different factors come into play. One was I just landed a 6-figure project. So truth is, I didn't really need the work, so I had that leverage. But also, I knew because I asked questions. I asked about their business. I asked about, where is this on their list of priorities? I found out that this was the number one priority across all of their projects, and that it had the potential to make them a lot of money because they would gain a lot of new clients from this. So very important for you to understand where this project sits on their list of priorities. Now here's a bonus. One pain point that always exists for your client is this. Your client needs to be able to find good help. Your client needs to be able to find good consultants to help them grow their business, leverage technology. That is always going to be a pain point, and it is not easy and it is not fun. So if you put your mind to it that you're going to do a great job by asking all these questions, by being this thorough in your investigation, by actually taking the time to think about how am I going to aggravate this pain point so that this client takes the steps forward that they really need to help their business. If you do such a great job, your client is going to come back to you again and again. There's a project I'm working on right now. It's migrating business intelligence implementation from another platform to Power BI. And my client just told me, they said, Brandon, if you have more availability, we'll take it. That is gold when you are a consultant and you have clients that are clamoring for you, clamoring for your time, wanting every bit that you can possibly give them. That means as a consultant, you don't have to go out and chase work. You don't have to wonder where your next project is coming from. Your ultimate goal here is to build those client relationships where your client comes back to you again and again. And I'll share something here that really helps me. It helps me to think about doing work at this level. There's a scripture in the Bible in Colossians 3:23. And it says this, whatever you do, do it from the heart, as something done for the Lord and not for people. It's another translation of that says, whatever you do it with your whole heart. And I believe God put that scripture in the Bible because he expects us to be excellent at our work. It specifically talks about doing work and doing it with your whole heart, putting all of your effort and energy and zeal into it. And I believe God expects us to do that. So think about this. What would it mean what would it mean to your consultancy? What would it mean to you as a freelance consultant if you thought about doing every single project you do for God? Think about how you would do that, what you would want to present to God as your solution, as your work product, as your deliverables. With that, I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.